I'm Pastor Johnson. I'm normally in the Holly location, and it's fun to come out here again. First of all, it's fun to be in this building. What a blessing, huh? And so it's good to be here with you. I've been watching this whole process for a few years, and so I'm normally in the Holly location. I'm the growth pastor, and so kind of oversee the growth communities, the Bible studies, and then a lot of the writing ministry that goes out from the church. And so it is definitely a privilege to be here and to be able to share with you. So I was looking at an article this week, and it was saying, doing dishes is the worst. This is now an empirically proven fact. Dishwashing causes more relationship distress than any other household task. A magazine called The Atlantic out of the New England states, it's been in existence about 150 years. They did a study on this, and they had the Council of Contemporary Families look at all the household tasks, and they said that doing the dishes was the one that is, you're nodding yes. Is that a fair statement? That it's the worst. As they went through the article a little further with it, they said in the last 10 years, men have increased their help around the house from 2 hours a week to 4 hours a week. So I'm just waiting to watch I'm watching for the women to look at their husband and say, really? No, you're nudging them saying, you do more than that, honey. I'm excited about this, right? It came to dishwashing and said in the last 20 years, the percent for taking dishwashing on together rose from 16%. So 20 years ago, you would have, 84% of the households, it was woman's work. Now, we're up to 29% of doing it together, dishes together. Now, gentlemen, if you are going to miss a lot of this message, I want you to catch something right now. They talk about benefits of doing dishes together in all aspects of the relationship. Can I just leave it there for a moment? And so doing dishes together creates a team atmosphere. And that's what this whole week, this series we're going through is, how do we team up as a family when we're taking on the dishes? Are we taking this on together? But I want to go into the whole concept of raising children and how the team effort and working together. With dishes, the last thing with it, they made some suggestions where it'd say, hey, I'll do dinner on Monday, you do dishes, you do dinner on Tuesday, I'll do, whatever, back and forth kind of thing. Or you wash, I'll dry, which is really funny because do I even need to ask how many of the families have a dishwasher? And so for my wife and I unload, she loads normally. That doesn't mean I'm not allowed to load something in the dishwasher. It doesn't mean she never unloads the dishwasher, but that's just something we've come about with that, teaming up on this. And so, you can think through that a little bit. I saw one of the worst cartoons ever, a little comic strip thing, and it's bride and groom just married, and they're by the cake, and the groom, and I'll have to admit, the cartoon took me a moment to catch it. So, but the groom goes to give a speech. He goes, I want to thank my in-laws for the new dishwasher. Took you that split second too, maybe? And you're like, oh, no, that didn't go well. Our philosophy is, if you don't like doing the dishes, get a dog. Oh, sorry. We'll stop there with it, okay? But the passage I want to go to for this is in Deuteronomy chapter 6. And so in Deuteronomy chapter 6, I'm going to spend some time on verses 4 through 9. It starts off in verse 4, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. A number of you are already probably familiar with this passage, and just the reminder, and it's repeated again in the New Testament, that our focus needs to be on loving God. That I love you, Lord. And if you've never given your life to the Lord, I'm going to tell you, when it comes to the topic of parenting, it's one of those times we really realize that I need help. And so, but even for those who have given their life to the Lord, who believe that Jesus, as God, came down to earth, lived a perfect life, yet died for sin, died for our sin that had broken the relationship with God. And although he died for our sin, although they buried him, he rose again, he's alive, and offers us eternal life by faith. About time for an amen in there somewhere, right? And so we know that, okay? But have you given all of your life to the Lord? All aspects of it. And he says, love the Lord with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. In verses 6 and 7, again, I'm in Deuteronomy 6. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and you should talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise. I really like this aspect where he's talking about constantly investing in our children, constantly teaching them, that these words need to be on our heart. And I don't know if you're familiar with the name of Charles Haddon Spurgeon, but Spurgeon wrote something I thought was good. He said, let no Christian parents fall into the delusion that Sunday school is intended to ease them of their personal duties. The first and most natural condition of things is for Christian parents to train up their own children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Our Parents' Night Out, the Awana program, the different things are great things to help us. But really the focus of raising our children is on us. And we need to be reminded of that and take on that privilege, responsibility wholeheartedly. Verses 8 and 9 say, you shall bind them on a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. He's talking about the things of the Lord and teaching the Lord. If you go into Israel or into a Jewish community, and I was raised that, I don't know if I'm an 8 Mile kid, just put that out there, okay? When you're a city kid, you realize that there are different nationalities in different cities. Some of you are nodding with me on this, right? So with Paczki Day, if you really want Paczkis, you go to who said Hamtramck? Somebody was ahead of me. Yeah, it's Polish community typically, right? And then for the Jewish community, more Oak Park, raise up, so that kind of thing. But if you go to some of those communities now with a Jewish community, you'll see a lot of Farmington Hills also with it, but they will have, Orthodox Jews will wrap something around and they'll have some verses in a little box on their wrist because of this passage. There'll be times where they even have a wrap around their head and between their eyes, a little box with some verses in it. We constantly saw this in Israel. Whenever we go into a building, it would have a little metal tube, kind of like so you could put a scroll in it. Just a small scroll of verses. And it was constantly these visual reminders as they went in. As we go into this topic of parenting, I remind you it's not for the weak or the coward. That parenting is one of the toughest things, but most rewarding things you'll ever do. And I remember, so my wife and I are high school sweethearts from youth group. So we went to different high schools, but we met at the same church and started dating when I was 10th grade. She was 9th grade. And so married, finished our schooling, and coming back to our home church with our 2 kids, and our daughter's in the nursery. And one of the nursery workers excited to see Angela and I, and meet our kids and that kind of thing. And so she looks at our daughter, who's like 4 or 5 at the time, and says, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And she says, "A mommy." And the nursery worker says, No. Do you want to be a nurse like your mom? She goes, "No." A teacher like your dad? "No, a mommy." She goes, no. And I look at, this friend, an older friend, and I'm like, leave her alone. What's wrong with her wanting to be a mommy? That be the calling that she wants. I think sometimes we forget the value of that. I want to go into 3 points today and just reminders for you. A lot of these things you've already thought through, but it's good for us to think through them again. The first one is looking for teachable moments. Teachable moments. In Deuteronomy 6:6, and these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. I'm going back to a verse we already looked at, but these words I command you shall be on your heart. It first starts out with parenting or having an influence on someone else, that we allow the Lord to have an influence on us. That we're thinking spiritually, that our focus is on what the Lord would have and how he would view different things. On my heart, and it's an intentional focus. Chuck Swindoll was the president at Dallas Theological Seminary, a pastor, an author, a speaker, one I really enjoy, but he wrote something with a little bit of sarcasm, and Pastor Story spoke today at 9 o'clock. You can catch that during the week online. You got to realize that he has a little bit of sarcasm to him, and it's beautiful. And so, but Chuck Swindoll says, you want to mess up the minds of your children? Here's how, guaranteed. Rear them in a legalistic, tight context of external religion, where performance is more important than reality. Fake your faith. Sneak around and pretend your spirituality. Train your child to do the same. Embrace a long list of do's and don'ts publicly, but hypocritically practice them privately, yet never own up to the fact that it's hypocrisy. Act one way, but live another. And you can count on emotional and spiritual damage. It will occur. I thought, wow. He's using a little bit of reverse psychology on us and a reminder on how we need to be real. I will tell you that I worked in student ministry for a number of years, decades, and as adults, we can put on a front with each other a lot easier than you can with a high school kid. High school kids read right through us. They're looking for you to be real. If you're willing to be real, they're willing to give you a chance. If you're not willing to be real, you don't have a chance. Anybody agree with me on that one? Yeah? If you've worked with high schools, I'm kind of expecting every high schooler to raise their hand also, saying, yeah, that's fair enough. Just be real. Billy Sunday was a New York Yankee second baseman who got saved, radically saved, and became a preacher. As a matter of fact, in preaching, he would share the gospel about how we've sinned, and he would run to that section over there. And that because of sin, the penalty of death is hell, and he'd run to the back there. And then he would say that Jesus died for us, and he'd run over to there. He's like running the bases. And then to bring it home, to be saved in faith, and he would slide back into the podium while he's preaching. But he said something I thought was pretty powerful, actually. To train a boy in the way he should go, you must go that way yourself. I think too often we're trying to raise our children in a way that we haven't gone there ourselves. We expect something from them that we're not doing for ourselves. I had lunch with a friend on Thursday, and I had his wife as a student back in the 90s. And so, yeah, he's old. But we were talking about he's coaching basketball for his middle school son. And he says, I have these rules about different things. They're not allowed to yell at the referee, and they're not, certain things they just can't do, and they'll get benched. And he said, my son was on a breakaway layup. And as he's going for the layup, a guy pushes him from behind. And we know it should be a flagrant foul, right, for those who are basketball players. And he hits the wall, no call. And he looks at the ref and goes, what? And Dad goes, timeout, come on in, have a seat, you're benched. And then he said, game started back up, went over to his son, he goes, foul should have been called. I would have responded the same way you responded. I struggle with this too. Let's help each other with this. Well, that's pretty cool. The dad admitting where he struggles, he's intense, and he's saying to the son, you have the right to challenge me on this, but I'm going to let you sit down for a couple minutes to help you work on this also. Continuing Deuteronomy, going back in those verses, Deuteronomy 6:7, you shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in the house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise. You know, the concept of teaching diligently, it's something that's a priority. I'm teaching it diligently. It's often, it's with a focus, it's intentional. I got some interest out of this passage because he says, I want you to teach them when you sit down and when you're walking. Okay, so either when you're still or when you're moving. And then I want it to be when you lie down, so the last thing at night, oh, and by the way, the first thing in the morning when you rise, be teaching. It's a constant focus in our minds of thinking about what the Lord's doing for us. And as we go on our way, we look for those opportunities. I coached golf for a number of years. I was really into coaching golf, okay? I've received some awards for it. I was coach of the year for the state a couple times. For 500,000 coaches in the country, I was runner-up for National Coach of the Year. I know a lot of you are saying, that means you're first loser. I get that, okay? But invite us out to Minnesota for a banquet and stuff to find out I was first loser. But really into coaching golf, but if you watch me golf, you're like, oh, you're a baseball player, aren't you? You're not a golfer. I coach golf to have an impact on other lives. I remember walking down a fairway, and I'm talking to one of the players. It's the summer practice round. And I said, tell me about your dad. And he said, well, I've never met my dad. Because I hadn't met his dad. Grandpa would normally bring him to the course. I hadn't met his dad too. So let me know about your dad. He goes, never met my dad. My mom got pregnant when she was young, chose to have me, and he didn't want to, so he left the picture. I'm an accident. I said, oh, dude, you're not an accident. God has a plan for your life, a purpose. He thought of you way ahead of time. And I said, and by the way, your dad is missing out on one great kid. There must have been a lot of pollen in the air at the time. Because our eyes are just, we're bawling as we're walking down, And, but speaking in someone's life, he would always come back and visit me every time he was in town and give me a big old hug, and we would talk. I remember walking down a fairway. I got the privilege of coaching John Van Beesbrook's two of his boys. And if you're a hockey fan, John Van Beesbrook is the Beezer. He was a professional hockey goalie for 20 years. And so one of these matches, we're following his son. As we're walking down the fairway, John is a very good golfer, and he would say stuff like, Doc, try this. I'm like, okay. And he said, no, it's something Bernhard Langer taught me. And Bernhard Langer's a pro golfer. He's like, oh, that's who taught you? Like, how can I argue this now, right? But so he would share things with me. So as we're walking, he would normally check with his sons and say, hey, why don't you mention this to my son? Because he knows his son wouldn't listen to him saying it. But from the coach, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? But one time he says, hey, Doc, do you know what one of the great things about being a goalie was? I'm like, no. He said, I never had to serve my penalties. As a goalie, if someone got in my crease, I could take my stick. I'm not condoning this. But if they got too close, they got me mad, I could hit them with my stick, I could push on them, I could trip them, I could do anything, and somebody else had to go in the penalty box for me. He goes, you know what else? Jesus Christ did that for me. Jesus Christ served my penalty. He goes, that might preach. And I said, oh no, that's going to preach often. Because it's so true. Jesus Christ. But a teachable, we're walking a fairway on a golf course and we're talking about the gospel. And that Jesus Christ, right, paid the penalty for our sin. He went in the penalty box. You have a choice. Do you know that? You can stay in the penalty box yourself. You don't have to accept the free gift of eternal life. You can choose to stay in the penalty box, or you can accept Christ and be free. As I was retiring from coaching golf, some college players came back and we played a round. We played a round of golf. We didn't just play around. We played a round of golf, and as we're walking down the fairway, the guys were thanking me, and they're like, they like to mock me for my humor. I don't know why, but they'll tease me on stuff like that. But they said, "Hey, thanks for speaking into our lives." I mean, we had some great success with golf, but more than that, you spoke into our lives. And that was a highlight for me, that they would realize that it was intentional for me to want to do that. We talked a little bit about Deuteronomy 6, 8, and 9. You shall bind them on a sign in your hand. It shall be as frontlets between your eyes. Write them on the doorposts of your house. It's these visual reminders. My wife and I have a couple trees that when we look in our yard, they remind us of something. And so you may have a situation that's a celebration in your family where God has shown up. Planting a tree as a constant reminder is a great idea for it. In golf, I would use some object lessons with my players. One year I gave them, I went to the dollar store and got can openers. I gave all that on a Friday practice. We're at the putting green. I gave every guy a can opener. And they're like, "What is this for?" I said, "Just throw it in your golf bag." I'm like, "Okay." Throw it in. Monday's practice. "Okay, guys, you've had the weekend to think about it. Why do we have the can openers?" They said, "Because we're going to open a can." I said, whoa. No, hold on. I said, kind of, but not. No, I don't want you to finish that line. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I can. I want you to open a mindset that says, I can do something. And that passage is the last sentence of a paragraph in Philippians 4 that talks about being content. It talks about our attitude. In golf, attitude plays a big role. And so I want you to be thinking about, in the middle of a golf match, if you have to reach into your golf bag, it's normally not a good thing. It means you just lost a golf ball. And so you're going in to get another golf ball. I was watching a match, it was a try match. We're playing two other teams. A competitive match, my sixth player, you play six guys and you count the top four scores, but my sixth player, first hole, has a horrible hole, and double bogeys that hole. Gets to the second hole, I see him hit his drive, and he hits it about 15 feet. Doesn't quite get to the ladies' tees, and it's one of those things you get teased about and that kind of thing. And so he gets up there, hits his next shot, and all I see him do is hit his shot, go like this, and reach into his golf bag. And I'm like, well, there's those times as a coach where you say something, there's those times as a coach where you give them space. So I give them space. And I go follow some of the other guys around, get around to the end of the match. At the end of the match, the guys are coming in, and after 5 golfers, we've tied one team and we're losing to the other team. But I know this guy didn't start off well, but he's smiling. And he comes in, finishes off the last hole, walks over, tells us his score. We end up winning the match. And I look at him, he goes, so the second hole, he goes, I reached in my bag and I grabbed this stupid can opener. And I start chuckling. I think he was laughing more at me than with me, but he chuckled. And he said, I went up there and they had already found my ball. It didn't go in the water. I played the hole off. He goes, for the last 7 holes, I played 1 over par. So if you're a golfer, that's fabulous, okay? Especially being your 6th golfer. We come in winning, but I share this because some years later, he invited Angela and I to his wedding. And I'm at the receiving line after the wedding and give him a hug. And Robert says, Doc, I still have that can opener. The mindset of having that. I know I'm using a lot of illustrations with golf because some of you in here right now are like, this series doesn't relate to us because our children are older, they're out of the house, or we don't have children. I want you to realize that, if you pause when you get here, when I walk here, I'm watching children running everywhere here. It's beautiful. You know what I'm saying? The kids are all around. If you just stand there for a moment and just right before a gathering and just back where John's at, just watch. The kids are just going, and kids are chasing kids, and parents are trying to find out where they're at. And it's beautiful. There are children all around us that we can speak into their lives, that we need to be real and be intentional, but to speak in their lives. Pause and think about, who has God placed around you? It may not be your own children. It may be coming along somebody else and helping them and being that adopted grandparent or adopted aunt or uncle. I have Uncle Dave and Aunt Barb that I'm not related to, but that's how they've always been referred to. And you may have that same situation. One more illustration with it. I gave bicentennial silver dollars to my golfers one year. And I said, when you go to mark your ball on the green, I want you to just grab this and realize that they changed the mint because 1776, 1976. And I want you to just be reminded that God made you special, that you're fearfully and wonderfully made, that you're unique, and that's by God's design. They made you in His image. And then I want you to flip it over, and I want you to read, "In God We Trust." And as you go to mark the ball, I want you to think about "In God We Trust," because this is only a golf match. It's really not that big of a deal. I know that we're keeping score, so we want to win. But it's a golf match. So have fun with this, and if it's a tournament, you're probably missing school to do this. So enjoy it, but realize the guys you're golfing with may not know who God is. And how you respond is going to make a big difference. Be thinking about that. I've had the guys mention to me, they still have this coin. They didn't cash it in. I didn't know what they would do. The one guy says, "Oh yeah, I have it right on my state champs trophy." Of the reminder, "In God We Trust." Do you have those with your family? Those areas where it's the reminders of special things. I have a friend, it's a lady who is raising 4 children on her own. Well, with a community, if you know what I mean. And she has something she does, is whenever something happens where God shows up and they realize it in their life. There's a lot of times God shows up in our life, we don't even realize it and don't give Him credit. She says, but when we do realize it, we take a stone and we mark on it. We may mark the date on it, the event of what happened. And she has a tray in the living room, I believe it's the living room, that she has all these stones on. And that often, when it's time to go to bed, she'll say to one of her children, "Grab one of the stones." They'll grab it, and she lets them tell the story of what happened, reminding on how God showed up. And she takes it from the concept of the Old Testament with crossing the Jordan River, where Joshua had the stones placed there as a reminder that whenever you see this in the future, tell your children on how we crossed. These visual reminders, the things you come into. I have a friend who used to say, if a burglar broke into your house, by looking around, would they know that you're a Christian? And it really challenged me with it. By looking at what kind of pictures or posters you have up, what would they know about you? It was just an interesting concept. My wife and I have 2 children. I mentioned that. They're in their 30s. For their whole life, I've said to them 3 things. 3 things. I love you. You're the best because God made you special. I think we live in a society all too often where men aren't mentioning to their children they're proud of them. And so within the last year, I've written my kids, written that to them. This last week, my wife and I were talking about it. I text that to our daughter. Just when they're high school, it's fun because I could say to them, see you later, 3 things. And if they shrug me off, I'd say, remember, I got it. you don't have to say it. My friends are around. But it's a reminder that I love them, that I think they're amazing, but it's because of God. And so I want to lift them up, but not too far. Remember that there is a God. Romans 12:2 says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind." It's a new thought process for us. It's a new way of thinking We need to be intentional about thinking this way. Chuck Swindoll again says, each day of our lives we make deposits in the memory banks of our children. We're making deposits in their memory banks. Teachable moments. The second thing I want to go into, and these other 2 points I'm going to go through a lot quicker because they feed off of that one. But remember, it's a journey and not a destination. It's a journey and not a destination. When we're raising up a child, it's those daily things. And so celebrate daily. It's not like a Super Bowl where there's only one winner of the year, one champion of the year, and then the next year it changes. I mean, we get this mindset of, with the Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way he should go. And even when he's old, he'll not depart from it. And we have this thought that it's all about this. And no, that's a principle, not a promise. If you train up a child in the way they go, they're most likely going to go that way. And I'm glad it's not a promise, because for those who were raised not knowing about the Lord, that would mean they can't change their life. And we know that no matter how you were raised, at any point, you can give your life to the Lord. And so it can be changed. And so we need to focus on that first part of the verse. Train up a child in the way he should go. Train up a child in the way he should go. Another verse the same way, Philippians 1:21. For me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. I think we spend so much time with the second half of it, to die is gain, that we forget the real focus is, for me to live is Christ. And my goal to be living for Christ. Teachable moments, journey not destination. The third one's being a role model. And I remember with Charles Barkley, a great basketball player, but he came out one time, he says, I am not a role model. It's like, really not a choice you get. By your position, people are going to follow what you're doing. But what caught me with this is 1 Corinthians 11:1 is a verse that it goes, be imitators of me as I am of Christ. I'm like, Paul, that's pretty bold. Paul's saying, imitate me. I'm like, I don't know if I could say that. Like, imitate me. And so I kind of worked it through in my mind with, well, he's saying, imitate me as I imitate Christ. So things I'm doing that are like of Christ, do those also. And I appeased myself with that. I was comfortable with that until these last couple of weeks when I started studying it. And I realized 1 Corinthians 4:16, he says, be imitators of me. Philippians 3:17, brothers, join in imitating me. 1 Thessalonians 1:6, and you became imitators of us. 2 Thessalonians 3:7, for you yourselves know how you ought to imitate us. And for our translator right now who's doing it from English into Spanish, thank you so much. I'm hoping you're okay with running through the verses, but I know Chuck does it all the time. 2 Thessalonians 3:9, it was not because we do not have that right, but to give you and ourselves an example to imitate. 6 times Paul says, imitate me. And so the challenge is, do we have a life worth imitating? Do we have a life worth imitating for our children to imitate, but also the children around us, the next generation? The next generation is not the church of tomorrow, they're the church of today. And so are we setting the example for them? Josh McDowell says, we do not develop habits of genuine love automatically. We learn by watching effective role models. Most specifically by observing how our parents express love for each other day in and day out. If you're looking for one of the greatest gifts you can give to your children, love your spouse. You will teach them on how to love for the future. Love your spouse. It's important for our children to read the Word. Therefore, we need to read the Word. When it comes to going to a gathering or going to church, as we say, do your children watch you looking for an excuse not to go, or looking for a way to make sure you get there? When it comes to serving, are you excited about serving? Are you serving with them? Last night it was really cool because gathering in Holly, we have 3 cameras. There's a lady on this camera, her husband on this camera, and their high school son on the keyboard. And I couldn't point it out last night. We really didn't care what the two guys thought, but we would have embarrassed the lady. And we don't want to do that. But I could do it here in mentioning this whole situation, but serving together and the value of serving together. Actions speak louder than words. Actions speak louder than words. I've always wondered, why do children of alcoholics become alcoholics? They often do. Why? It's because what do they watch? They watch that when dad gets home from work, if he's had a stressful day, he grabs a drink. Without ever saying something, they realize when they're older, if you have a stressful day, what do? The natural thing is to grab a drink. When you celebrate, what do? You grab a drink. They weren't taught that intentionally. They caught that, which is a scary concept. A friend who mentioned his challenge came from his son when his son was in the car seat. They were stopped, there was a four-way stop in the car in front of them, and all of a sudden from the car seat, the child said, his son said, "Get out of my way, idiot." He's like, "Oh, I wonder where he's heard that before." And he knew he couldn't look at his wife and blame her because he was thinking of it right then. But how quickly they catch things. The topic I really want to go through is taught and caught. As we're going about our daily lives, we should be teaching intentionally, but realizing things are also going to be caught. Teachable moments. It's a journey, not a destination. A role model. I am blessed. I was raised in a Christian home, loving parents. When I was first told that God was a loving father, it was not a difficult concept for me to grasp, because my father was a loving father. He, as I look back, realize he took advantage of teachable moments. I'm thinking he did it intentional, but it was just part of who he was. A school teacher in Pontiac for 29 years in the summer, he would install window units, just air conditioners for like a single room. And if maybe you were raised in one of those neighborhoods where we weren't raised with central air, you had one room that had air conditioning. And depending on what the electric bill was going to be, you would turn that on and everybody would go there in the middle of August, whatever, in that one room. But he taught me that, I remember going into houses where he would talk to a widow and just say, "Do you need the furniture moved?" Or situations where maybe we nicked something or we scratched the wall and he'd point it out. He wouldn't just cover it up. I remember getting back into the vehicle in one specific time, and middle school kid, I'm grabbing the books, I'm filling out books for him, and I wasn't going with him to help him, believe me. If I can't fix it with a baseball bat, it can't be fixed, kind of thing. But he just wanted me to be with him and see these things. But I remember grabbing the books, and I could keep the books really well, and say, "How much?" $5. No, how much are we charging this lady? $5. $5. No, it's okay. God will take care of us. He had a phrase, "It's only money. It's only money, don't worry about it. Do the right thing, and God will take care of things." I know people like to spend a lot of time talking about, is it quantity or quality of time? There's not a formula. Just because you're spending a lot of time with your child doesn't mean you're doing it right. And don't try to excuse your schedule saying, "Well, when I'm with them, I'm really with them." It takes both. It's the quality of time, quantity time. And the last thing I would say with parenting, I've said it already, with parenting, be intentional. Let's be real. Let's go ahead and pray. Father, we definitely thank you for being here with us today. We thank you for allowing us to have an influence on others. Thank you for being willing to use us to encourage others. Thank you for the people that you've used in our past and even today that you've placed around us with an impact in our lives. Father, I pray that there's someone here today that hasn't given their life to you, that today would be the day of salvation, that today they would give their life to you. For those of us who have given our lives to you, we just pray that we would be real, and that we would look for opportunities to speak truth into other lives and encouraging others to give them hope. Thanks for second chances. Thank you for your love. And I pray this in my Savior's name. In Jesus' name, amen.